What's up, y'all? It's Shuffle. We are back with the second part of this Trinket tier list dealio thingamajig. I took a couple minutes to organize the trinkets a little bit better this time. They're mostly in the alphabetical order that you see on the list here, which I do need to scroll back up. Not only are they in alphabetical order, they are also in order by rarity. So that means I can just scroll down this list. At least to the best that I have them arranged. I don't think I made any mistakes. I might have made a couple, but you know what? We're here. So last time we looked at the common and uncommon trinkets. So the criteria is pretty much the S tier is just you can take this anytime. It doesn't matter what the well, I shouldn't say what the circumstance are, but like if it's applicable to the character and the situation, it's usually like a top pick. A's are usually only outclassed by the S, but they're also very strong picks. And then the B tiers are just kind of like placeholders. Once you find something better that you like, these are pretty much on the table to be sold. And the sell tier is for things that are just not even worth holding in your inventory if you want some extra gold. I am going to do the class trinkets last. That'll be the next video. And I think that's going to be quite a few because this is the biggest set here. So it's going to be a big pain. But you know what? It's all in the interest of fun, and people have actually asked about this type of video, so we're going to get started here. I'm going to try and go a little faster this time and not go as in-depth on my explanations of stuff. So, like, unless I need to. Alright, so let's actually get started. The Slayer rings, I think all of them are going to be A except for Eldritch, but just to start off with the Beast Slayer ring, 25% damage against subtypes or tribes or whatever you want to call them, and -8 dodge is a little impactful, but honestly, it's such a huge damage boost that if you can get your accuracy short up, it's really strong. So I like all of these. Like, these are almost always usable if you don't have like Ancestor's Pen or like some of the super mega top tier trinkets. And even then these are still good. Like, they are very good to have. So Berserk Charm, this is, I really don't like this one that much. It's got some really powerful upsides. This is actually one of the best balance trinkets that I've seen, where it's like the upsides are huge and the downsides are also huge. So I think it's either an A or a B, but I'm going to put it in B. That's my own personal bias here. The upsides are pretty monstrous. The downsides do suck pretty hard. So losing accuracy is the reason I don't put it up to A. So having less chance to go virtuous sucks, and having less accuracy is the biggest way to lose damage possible. Let's see. The Brawler's Gloves, these are B. The minus speed isn't too big a deal, but it's the minus crit. So you have a condition for extra damage, and then you have a huge chunk of flat damage, but then you lose more effective damage and having lower crits. I think that's pretty bad. The Dark Crown, this is really good actually if you play Torchless, but most of the time you're not playing Torchless or like low torch. So you don't really need this too much, but like if you play Torchless, this is probably A or S, but for the most part it's just B. Eldritch, this is the S tier Slayer's ring. Words are difficult, and the reason is Eldritch is the most common enemy type. So having this thing gives you the biggest uptime for the 25% extra damage. So they're like in the Cove, there's Eldritch, but then Eldritch is also kind of in the Weald, and it slips in randomly. And then also, not to be spoilerific, I'm not going to spoil other stuff, but there are quite a few prominent Eldritch enemies out there that are worth having this thing specifically for, so I do like to get it early. The Fasting Seal. This is okay. If you like to heal with food, like if you run one of those teams that Vestal and you like to heal with food, this is actually okay, but I honestly like rarely use this. I see the upsides, but I just don't think it's that practical, and it's like such a niche effect where it's like, yeah, I get some dodge, but also, you know, I don't have to worry about starving, and I don't get hunger checks basically, and so I can just eat food to heal, and it's like, yeah, you could have 4 of these on your whole team and then you do some goofy stuff, but otherwise it's just awkward. I don't like it that much. The Feather Crystal, this might actually be S. So Feather Crystal is 2 speed, 8 dodge, and then these 2 penalties. The only one that really matters is the stun resist. So that does suck, but stuns aren't too common. However, I should say that once you start getting into higher level stuff, stuns do become more common, so this thing kind of has that weakness. Even then, though, the feather crystal, until you get to like really high level trinkets or specific class trinkets, this thing is really good in the blue pool. So what I should have said also is the way I'm rating the trinkets is like against each other in their tiers. So it's like, yeah, some blue ones are better than orange and some orange ones do suck. But, you know, the blue ones are mostly measured against how they stack up to other blue ones and like when you find them in the game. So usually you're finding blue trinkets around level 3. Sometimes 4, and then like later in the game, obviously they're more frequent. So it's a pretty good thing for like level 3. I like it a lot. The Manslayer's Ring, this is 25% damage, so same -8 dodge. These used to be white trinkets with no minus dodge, by the way. These were busted back in the day, and they got nerfed super hard, to be fair. So that's how they should have been. But the Manslayer's Ring, this could actually be... No, it's not B. Unholy Slayer is B, because Unholy is a very not common archetype. Human is pretty common as a subtype, so it's alright. The Moon Cloak is... It's stronger than the Sun variants. The Sun variants aren't that good anymore. But the Moon Cloak is pretty strong. The bonus stress is like a huge drawback just because... what is it? In darkness, stress gets ramped up super hard, so you really want to mitigate stress more than anything, but this does pretty well. The Moon Ring, this used to be the Sun Ring stats, so just to give you an example of how busted the Sun gear used to be. The Moon Ring, actually the Moon Ring was stronger, I just don't remember the exact stats on it, but 10 accuracy, 15% damage, pretty good. If you play Torchless, even with the 10% stress, this is pretty big access to damage. The Quick Draw Charm is actually, like, it's B tier on Darkest and Radiant, and it's Cell tier on Stygian and Blood Moon. So it gives you a fat bonus crit and a huge thing of speed. This works better when your entire team has it, and like your damage dealers have to crit. And if your damage dealers crit on the opening turn, then like they they just wipe out the enemy. Like, the Quick Draw Charm is basically giving your character a surprise advantage. Like, you're saying, I'm going first. There's just nothing you can do about it. Unless my name is Crusader and you're the pink fish, I'm usually going first. So if you have all 4 of these on your team, or I should say 4 of them on your team, you're just getting a surprise every round, unless you get surprised. So that's pretty awesome. But the detriment and then losing all of these bonuses sucks. Like, these just become dead weight if you don't, like, kill 2 enemies on turn 1. So that's why I say that if you're playing in Stygian or Blood Moon, where things have a hit point boost, this becomes a lot worse. The crits are more relevant, but it's still pretty hard to wipe out 2 or 3 enemies and get a huge advantage, which is what this thing is supposed to do. And if it can't do that, it's not that good. The Recovery Charm, this is solid. If you have like a Man-at-Arms or some kind of guard tank, and or some way to like really focus fire someone, like they mark themselves, what have you. This really helps your healing output. Otherwise, it's usually better to have plus healing on your healer than it is to have healing recovery on one person. So there you go. Naturally, my cats were asleep, and here's Echo trying to mess with me now that I'm recording. He's like, hey, what's going on? Let me climb in this box. Let me walk around. Let me hit my scratch post. Don't do anything, man. Come on. I'm recording. Actually, I think Echo's going to sleep. He went to one of his sleep spots. So the... Oh, I got these backwards in terms of my order here, but we're just going to do the Solar Crown. So Solar Crown's conditional minus 20% stress. This is really strong. A lot of us are going to play at highlight. This could arguably be S, but sometimes, you're not playing at 75 the entire time. Sometimes it dips, so, it just loses the effect, but it's still pretty good. Sun Cloak, this is actually like Cell tier. The bonus is so small for like this downside and these conditions that I just don't like it that much. It's okay. Like, you can make a case for this, honestly, if you really wanted to, but I don't use this. Like, there's just not enough juice in that squeeze. Sun Ring, this can still find use. So 5 accuracy, still solid, 10% damage, really nice. So having them together is a big boost. And then 10% stress. You could argue that like both of these could be higher. In the previous patches in the game, this was like obviously S because it was just so busted, but it's not anymore. The Sniper's Ring, which I passed. So you get bonus accuracy, bonus crit, and minus speed in rank 4. So this could be higher if the effects were stronger or a little bit different, but This is really just for Arbalest. You could make a case for Houndmaster if you have like a mark team and Bounty Hunter or like double Houndmaster with marking and stuff like that, but for the most part, this isn't that strong, especially because Arbalest is the best person for it, and high base accuracy on Sniper Shot is Arbalest's like best feature. So she's really just getting the speed manipulation and the crit out of this, and there's a lot of other ways to get damage and speed change, or like one of them, or have like bigger power spikes in certain directions than having this thing. Like the accuracy does come into play sometimes, but not enough to warrant it going higher, I think. The Unholy Slayer, this is actually B. It could be A just because it's the same thing. The effect is just really strong, but Unholy is very uncommon as a subtype. Like there are a couple bosses. The Ruins are Unholy. There are a couple random enemies like Swiffy Gast in the Cove. He's Unholy. But there's just not enough Unholy for this thing to be like worth a higher slot here. Going pretty quick. Book of Sanity. I just popped my chair by accident. This is A. And the reason this is A is because there's power creep against it. So it actually, like, I can't make this S, and then the power creep version is also S. So this thing's A. But it's just a flat 20 stress, unconditional, just amazing. If you can get this from a boss early on, as one of your boss drops on like week, like 10 or something like that, it's really good. You'll use it for a long time. But once you get to like level 6 and stuff, there's so many other trinkets in your pool that you'll be wanting to use other stuff instead of this. So this kind of falls off at some point. The Cleansing Crystal, I love this thing. This is so good. I love putting this on Man-at-Arms if I have to do a lot of heavy guards for a dungeon or whatever I'm doing that has a lot of status effects coming in. It just covers everything. And if you don't have status of your own, or if you're not using Bellow, then it's really powerful. So you can even use this on characters like, I don't know, like say you use Highwayman and you want to give him something defensive and you don't want to use Open Vein, then this works. So there are a lot of applications for this thing. You just have to be creative. But it's really good. It's a powerful effect. The Ethereal Crucifix. I don't like this thing. I feel like it's good, and I'm just too scared to use it, so I'm going to put it in A. And the reason is bleed resist is massive. You know what? No. I'm going to put this in it's in B. It's in B. So here's my thinking here. The Eldritch bonus damage is awesome, but we also have a rare trinket that gives us the same thing with a much easier penalty. And the reason I'm thinking that way is because, yes, we get this nice fat bleed resist, which is pretty awesome, but then we get the HP cut at the same time. So when I have an HP cut like that, I want to guard that unit. That's how I want to get around that. And if I'm guarding them, then the bleed resist is useless, so why not just use the Eldritch Slayer Ring instead? So I think this thing gets a lot of value in terms of its itemization, but it's pretty tough to use because even if you can block a lot of the bleed effects, there's still direct damage to worry about, and that can really creep up quickly, and losing 20% of your max HP is a pretty big ask to get rid of. So you have to play very well with this thing, and even when you play super well, it's like still worse than this in a lot of cases. So I just don't think it's higher than A. It's definitely like probably B to me. Focus Ring, I think, is S. So 10 accuracy, 5 crit at the cost of 8 dodge. Leper loves this thing. Crusader, Hellion. There are a lot of classes that can make use of it. You can even put it on Highwayman if you really wanted to. It's just a lot of offensive power in a trinket that you can get for like your entire party if you really wanted to. You can just get 4 copies of it. So I think it's really good. I use this thing quite frequently. I think it's really good. I like it a lot. The Fortifying Garlic. This thing is also S. This is amazing. And it's good you can only get one of them in a playthrough because otherwise you would just put this on everyone. It's bleed, blight, and disease resist with no conditions and no penalties. Like, what more can you say about that? So there are a lot of applications for this. And if you don't want to use like a blood charm or something like that, this gives you just even more advantage. Especially if you have someone that's guarding. So again, Man-at-Arms loves this thing. Houndmaster can use it. Antiquarian can force protect me on people that have Fortifying Garlic. So there's a lot of applications. Hero Ring, like, the effect is good. the 25% virtue chance. The base virtue chance in the game is 25%, so this puts you to 50, so it's a 50-50 to go virtuous, which is really powerful, but that's still like a 50-50. And this is only really good in virtue farming because otherwise I do not even want to roll those dice to see affliction potential on my characters. So it's like, if it's sitting there doing nothing, it's just wasted value. And then if it goes off and you still get afflicted, or like if you get afflicted and it goes through and you're not virtuous, then this is just bad. It's so worthless at that point. It's beyond worthless. What's a stronger word than worthless? Oops. Accidentally clicked over to some stuff there. Let's see. Oh, bracer. This thing is... I almost want to put this in S, but I'm going to put it in A. I think the legendary bracer is really good. I think it's really good for certain characters that like to use marks specifically. Or if you have like leper with jester, then this gets a lot better. But otherwise, 20% damage is nice. I think this boosts riposte damage as well. Someone can check me on that. I think it does. It might not. -1 speed is great for manipulating your turn orders. So for instance, if you want to do like a dancing comp, you put this on the person that's supposed to go second or third, or however your team is set up. And then the +10 stress does kind of hurt, but considering that you can manipulate the -1 speed to be an upside, it needs some other downside. Martyr Seal. This was actually debated in my Discord a little bit. I think it's S. I've had people say it's A, and it's fine to be A. Like you can say it's A, and I wouldn't really fight you on it. But the reason I like it a lot is because you get the unconditional 15% max HP, which is just nice. There are a lot of trinkets that give HP, and sometimes they have like conditions, or sometimes there's like the Flesh Heart, which has a huge upside and like no downsides. But this is a pretty big chunk of life for most characters, and then you get all this stuff here. So you get the Death Blow Resist, which is the most important. So just in case you are in a really tough dungeon, maybe you have some level 5s and you have this thing floating around, you're like, okay, I can chance it with this. Then you have a pretty good chance to live with all the life and the death resist effects or death blow resist. And then if you just happen to be at death's door, like you're stuck there waiting for your healer to pick you up off death's door, or sometimes you get really lucky and you like have these fights where you really understand the mechanics and you have a good team for it. So it'll be... The enemy doesn't have like any super cleaves or stuns or like ways to bleed or something like that to stick to your characters. And then you can guard them when they're at death's door and just have this massive power boost and protect them. So if you can do that kind of stuff, this thing is nutty. But it's a little hard to pull off. But when it goes off, it's good. And I think this is like unironically the best flagellant trinket, even though he has all his class trinkets and stuff like that. This is like the best thing for him in my eyes, because Flagellant does like to have not so much the damage, like the damage is important, but having the crit. Flagellant loves crit. He wants to like crit exsanguinate if possible. I'm gonna take a sip of water here, then cry looking at how big the pool is. Tough Ring. This is B. I used to use this thing a lot, and it does have some pretty strong stats, but now that it has like the -15% damage, that sucks even more. So it's just like a lot of tankiness, and the characters that can tank, like Man-at-Arms specifically, he gets enough mileage out of just guarding people and getting his natural protection boost that all of this, coupled with the downsides, just aren't worth it. Like, Man-at-Arms dies more to stress than raw damage in a lot of cases, so you kind of put this on, what, like damage dealers, like Shieldbreaker, who can be tanky, and I don't know, It's not bad, it's just hard to use, and I just don't think it's really, like, relevant or super good anymore. I'm sure someone uses it constantly to great effect, so, you know, let me know about it, but otherwise, I used to use this a lot, and I don't think it's that good anymore. It's okay. The Ancestor's Musket Ball, so we're getting into Ancestor Trinkets, which means I have to scroll past. So the Musket Ball is 10% range damage, 8% range crit, and then plus 10% stress. All the Ancestor Trinkets have plus 10% stress. It sucks. This is some pretty strong upsides, and obviously that downside, but the reason this is an S is because range damage dealers have a lot of other things that they can grab to do really good damage. Specifically, I couldn't find it in the pool here. Let me look real quick. Specifically, the matchstick If it even exists, there it is. So the matchstick specifically is just better. Like, it's just a better version of this thing, unless you really care about the speed. So this, it's okay. Like I said, Arbalest gets some really good trinkets for herself, like keening bolts that just blow this away. There's Houndmaster wants bleed more than direct damage, so he doesn't really care about this. Grave Robber is usually better with lunge, so she doesn't want this. So there's just more competition for range damage dealers, which means this can't be S, in my eyes. Ancestors Bottle, we hate to see this instead of the map, but if you get it early, it's actually not that bad. It's, what, plus 25% life? And then food consumed and stress. Those suck, but 25% life isn't bad, especially early on. This blows away like any other trinket you might find in early game. The candle is S, and the reason... Actually, let me go back here. This doesn't blow away anything you might find, but it's good. It complements a lot of things. It's pretty strong early, and then it falls off late. The candle, conditional, but you get dodge, speed, and damage. Really good on any damage dealer. Just makes them hyper carry status, so you just have to cover their accuracy, and they're good to go. Ancestors Coat, this is 15% dodge, 10% stress. There are some characters that like to use this to dodge tank. Jester's one of them. You can put this on Antiquarian and stuff to protect them, but it's good. It's strong. It could be B, but I don't know. I think it's A. It's pretty good. The what's the mustache cream? So debuff and blight resist. This is okay. This could actually be cell tier. It's weird because by itself it's actually good, but by the time you get it, it's not good. By the time you're finding this, you have Cleansing Crystal, you have Fortifying Garlic, you have Class Trinkets, you have all these other things, and then you get this. Like, you have boss trophies. There's so many ways that this becomes outdated very quickly, but on the off chance you find this before other stuff, then it's like B tier. So I have to think of it that way. What's next? Is it the handkerchief? It is. I think the handkerchief is a little bit better, because bleed's more common. But it's like, even though bleed is more common, this would be like B plus tier, but I don't have a B plus tier because I think plus and minus is kind of stupid in a tier list. So this is still B. The reason is bleed is way more common. It's important to block it, but then there are a lot of other ways to block bleeds than using this. So it's okay. Again, you find so many things that are better than this that by the time you get this, it just doesn't have a place. The Ancestor's Idol, this is a... Is it a cell? It's a cell. It can't be a cell. This is Hero Ring with a different, like, stat allocation. It's pretty close to cell. Like, Hero Ring is already close to cell. This is also very close to it. The reason is, like, Virtue with not much else going on isn't huge. Death Blow resist, like, such a low amount is honestly not worth it. I'm gonna redo that take, so I apologize. But the Lantern, I think, is A. So right here we have minus surprise chance against you, and then plus surprise chance against the enemy. So these are both really good. So 40-point swing. Very powerful stuff. And the Lantern is good to use if you can't find the map. But even if you can't, or even if you do find the map, the Lantern is still pretty powerful. So this can do really well in like non-boss missions. So if you're just doing, you know, normal runs to power up or, you know, get money and stuff like that, then this does well. It's pretty strong. The map though, the map is S tier. Like, I use this all the time. If it is not a boss mission, this is on my character. If it is not a pre-made, or I should say like predetermined dungeon, because there are a few dungeons where it's always the same layout. If it's not one of those, then I am using the map. Just being able to scout to prevent surprises, to have other characters disarm traps so you don't have to bring rogues. Really good. 10% stress is honestly not a huge deal. If you think of it like this, the 10% stress, it might work out to an extra like 10 or 15 stress over the dungeon, possibly less. But if you disarm like 1 or 2 traps with that character, then it's negated. I don't know. That's just how I think about it. The map is very powerful. I put it on everyone that I can if it's not a boss mission, and I think it is just amazing. The pen is next. So the pen is actually S. And you may be wondering, well, the pen and the musket ball are the same. It's just that one is for melee and one is for range. And it's like, that's true. The reason the pen is better is because there are more melee damage dealers, like more dedicated melee damage dealers in the game. I had a huge pause in there for some reason. Than range damage. And also melee damage is more flexible in its damage choices. So having this alongside like Hunter's Talisman or some other giant boost to like accuracy that I can't think of off the top of my head, then it makes Ancestral's Pen really good. And since the melee characters have higher base damage, this means that the pen scales their damage higher comparatively to the musket ball. So I think you get a lot more out of using the pen than the musket ball. So that just makes it S as opposed to this, which is just A. The pistol. Let's see. Speed and accuracy. This is B. The accuracy boost is massive, and the speed is nice, but I keep coming back to this statement. So it's like the two biggest range damage dealers, like the dedicated range damage dealers, are Arbalest and Houndmaster. You can set up other characters for range damage, but Arbalest does not have an accuracy problem, and also there's so many range damage trinkets that give you accuracy. Like, there's so many ways to get accuracy as a range character that the upside of the pistol is just kind of eh. I was talking to Thick Veiny Sausage, and he mentioned some idea of having the Arbalest with rabies and the pistol, which I thought was pretty interesting. So that could be some solution here. Like, if you need to give your range damage dealers rabies, then the pistol actually covers them. So that's actually, a point in its favor. But otherwise, I think there are better range options than this, especially with the accuracy, that I usually just don't run this. The portrait, just 50% more XP with stress. By the time you get this, it's like, who are you leveling up anymore? Like, do you really need to be leveling people? So having this on low-level characters and trying to baby them through dungeons, like, they're going to get a lot of stress very quickly, which does matter, and having the extra XP does get them through a little bit quicker, but for the most part, it's kind of whatever. Like, I've had a phase where I just used this relentlessly, and I just leveled new teams over and over, and I thought it was pretty cool. And then after that, I just stopped using it. So if you get to use it, it's good. If not, it's just, worthless. The Ancestor Signet Ring. 10 accuracy, 10 prot. I don't know where everyone else rates this. I actually think this is S. The Signet Ring is one of the very few examples in this game of being able to get offense and defense in the same trinket. And not only that, it is the best offensive stat and arguably the best defensive stat tied together. It's hard to say, I don't know, like, I think resists are better defensive stats, but out of HP, prot, and dodge, I think prot is the hardest to get. So having this, especially on like Leper or Crusader or Hellion or even Bounty Hunter, for instance, like having more accuracy on those characters and letting them be tanky does a lot for your team. So I think people, I don't want to say sleep on it, but I definitely think that the Ancestor Signet Ring is undervalued. I think it's actually really good. Okay. Ancestor Scroll, this is S. Easily S. So the scroll opens up a lot of characters for healing. Actually, I should probably just leave it on this page. So for instance, Occultist doesn't get a healing class trinket. This gives Occultist a healing trinket. Crusader has two pretty good healing trinkets. This gives him a third one. So there are a lot of applications for this. It's better than Junia's Head in like every instance almost, except for Vestal. And even then, it's still probably better than Junia's Head for Vestal, just because you're trading 5% healing for 10% stress. So I think the scroll is just amazing. All right, let's scroll down here. Had to take a water break. This is the second video I'm recording today, so I don't know how well my voice is going to hold up. These are freaking circus trinkets. I don't want to play circus. Where? It's up here. So Aria box, minus 25% stress. This is why Book of Sanity can't be S. It gets power crept by like 2 different trinkets. So minus 25% stress, amazing, no downside. The Overture box, this is a great defensive option. So 15% max HP, 8 dodge, minus 2 accuracy. The downside is meaningful. It's not that big, but it is meaningful. But it's some pretty strong upsides, especially if you don't play in darkness, where the enemies have higher accuracy. Then this thing is actually very, very tanky for your characters. Whew. Starting to make mistakes already, but you know what? We're almost through this. The Crescendo box, I think, is A. So Crescendo box is 2 speed and 15 damage for 10% stress. I could see a case for S. It's just a very strong effect, but I think if you're playing in higher light, then it gets power crept by the candle. So it's kind of weaker in that regard, but it's still really good. Like, you could say it's S and I wouldn't fight you on it. Dismas head. I'm gonna find it this way. Oh, it's right under. Okay. So Dismas's head is 25% damage, minus 10% HP, and then plus 20% stress. I think this thing sucks, honestly. I'm gonna put it in B. It's good that you can find it early, and it's a large source of damage, but the downsides are so massive. Like, these are some huge downsides for just 25% damage. Like, you could argue A, but if you come in here and tell me S, I just disagree. There are just better damage options. The benefit of Dismas's head and like any of the head trinkets is the fact that you can find them super early. So if you find this early, this thing is really good, but it gets outclassed pretty quickly, especially when you start getting class trinkets. Barristan's head, this is actually cell tier. So it's a large amount of prot, but I would rather wear heavy boots and then have like less detrimental downsides. And I always come back to this point. So the best person for this thing is Man-at-Arms. And I'm going to say again, Man-at-Arms does not have a problem dying to hit point damage. Man-at-Arms dies to affliction. Like, almost every time Man-at-Arms dies, it's because either, you know, maybe the itemization was bad, or the quirks were bad, or, you know, he got crit 3 times, that happens. But for the most part, Man-at-Arms dies to afflictions. Like, he gets afflicted, he stops protecting people or buffing, or he refuses heals. That's when he dies. It's not when he just gets hit like 18 times and no one heals him. That just doesn't happen. So this is good for other characters that need some prot, but like I said, it's worse than heavy boots. So I cannot justify it being B when it's just worse than a green trinket. Junia's head is, I want to say A. I don't like Junia's head that much, honestly, but the thing I was just talking about, you can get it early, and 30% healing early is very strong. Like, this can let your Vestal carry pretty hard in a few different runs until you start getting your higher level trinkets. So it's good. I don't think there's much else to say about it. The downside's huge. The 20 stress. So if you can avoid that, then, well, you can't avoid it, but if you can deal with it, then you're going to like the healing output. The Tempting Goblet, this is B, which is sad for how hard it is to get. You're definitely afflicting when you have this because it's got plus stress and minus virtue. Well, you're not definitely afflicting. Like, if you get stressed to the point of affliction, you are afflicting. But before then, it's still pretty good. So 20% HP. I don't know why I keep going up there. Like, I want to click and go back to the tier list screen. But 3 speed, 8 dodge, and a lot of life. Pretty good defensive stats, and then speed can be used offensively. So, like, you could probably make a case for up here, but I think it's got a lot of strong drawbacks, so I don't want to put it higher. Where are the Crimson Court trinkets? Right here. Delayed Curse Craving. This can be helpful. So this vintage here. Yeah, it just delays the Curse Cravings. And all the note here says does not affect Bloodlust, which sucks, but whatever. This, I don't think this can be higher. This is just really helpful when you don't have a lot of blood. Sorry about that. Yeah, so if you don't have blood early in a playthrough, this is better. But it falls off pretty quick, and then you can sell it. the Crimson Signet. Yeah, so if you're hit with Crimson Curse, you get minus 25% stress. Not bad, but, you know, bad conditional thing when you have other things that are just better than it. So I don't think it can be higher than this. What am I looking at? The Snuff? This is actually pretty good. So 8% crit and then 10% dodge if you're bloodlusting. And bloodlust lasts for like 20 turns, I think. So if you have this, and you have a character with Crimson Curse, and you're going to fight a boss, you can bring this on them, and then supercharge them when you bloodlust for the fight, because it will last the entire fight. So you just have to be craving at the right time. That's the only downside. But if you can get that downside to work in your favor, then this thing is going to be pretty strong. You could argue it's B, because the condition is pretty hard to manipulate, but whatever. The Rat Carcass. I think this is honestly sell tier. No, it's B. So my criteria for B is that you can sell it. My criteria for sell tier is you sell it when you get it. So this can be sold later when you have a lot of blood on hand, so your people in town don't have to worry about it. This has some synergy with this thing that we're going to talk about here in a sec. We'll just do it next. So it has synergy with that, but otherwise, it still just kind of sucks. I'm not a fan. Okay, so Mantra of Fasting. So you get 40% HP plus 7 speed if you are wasting. But as this note says, the wasting effect normally is minus 20% life and minus 4 speed. So this nets to plus 20% HP and plus 3 speed. This is sell tier. Like, you do not want to be wasting. It doesn't even matter. Like, you have to waste to get this online. And there's so many trinkets that give you either a good chunk of HP or speed. And you don't have to worry about the, the other effects. You know, you're free to keep people neutral in their Crimson Curse state, or you can bloodlust them. You don't have to wait till they're wasting to get like a little more tanky. I don't know. I just think it's bad. I think it's bad. I have never used this. So you might be saying, well, Shuffle, if you never used it, how do you know it's bad? It's so bad, I never want to put it on anyone. So I think that might justify my opinion. Let's see. The Dazzling Mirror. This thing's really good. So you get 4 speed against Bloodsuckers, which are the Crimson Court subtypes, except for one person that shall not be named. One specific person, and then you get 20% extra stun against Bloodsuckers. This is amazing. So if you bring Plague Doctor to Crimson Court, this lets her go first against mosquitoes, which is pretty hard to do. So she can consistently like speed tie or go first against mosquitoes, and then she can stun them. And if you give her this and Blasphemous Vial, she can like double stun stuff in Crimson Court, which her blights have a lot more trouble sticking. But her double stunning stuff that aren't like the Supplicants is amazing. I love it so much. I'm trying to use a different word than amazing, but you know, it's pretty tough to string together this commentary and then use different words of praise. But it's good. I don't know. It's super helpful. Let's see. Mercurial Salve. This is another S tier. This is just unconditional 25% damage against Crimson Court enemies. And so if you're going to Crimson Court and you bring like Highwayman, who does very well there, this is just plus 25% damage, and he can do a ton of damage for it. So I like this a lot. I think we're in boss trophies. Okay, let's go. Let's do the Sculptor's Tools since we're here. They're B just because they have very limited applications. When they can be applied, they're very good. This is 40% damage against stonework enemies. So when you get to use it, they're very strong, but otherwise they just do nothing. They sit in your box. So they're not sell tier because when you get to use them, they do matter quite a bit. It is a nice quality of life thing. So Baron's Lash. 4 speed if you have Crimson Curse. So this is... it's like sell tier, honestly. Just because there's so many other ways to get speed. No, this is B. It is a pretty big speed boost. So if you have Crimson Curse, it doesn't matter what state you're in. You get 4 speed, and you get debuff resist, which is pretty nice. There are a lot of debuffs in the game. And the minus stun does suck, but this trinket just isn't that good. So the Viscount Spices. 5 crit if you have Crimson Curse, and then if you like to food heal, this is, you know, doubling your effective healing. This is sell tier, man. Right? There's no way. There's no way it's B. Just because if you're going to do food healing, there are a couple other ways to do it. Like, you could use fasting seals. So it's basically just a glorified 5% crit. And there are other ways to get crit and damage. Like, if you're not capped on accuracy, then crit's not as powerful. And if you don't have other ways to boost your flat damage, then crit still isn't as powerful. So I just don't think it's that good. The fan here from the Countess. So healing received, and then you have minus bleed resist if you have Crimson Curse. This thing is cell tier just because bleed is the most common damage over time type in the game. And having 50% extra healing if you're Crimson Cursed is a pretty big negative, especially considering that once you clear the Crimson Court content, the curse becomes way more manageable. So you could argue that you can put curse on the people you want it to be on, which is true. But for the most part, it's not a big upside, and the downside's pretty big, and then the condition for it sucks. So I just don't think this thing is good. The Pagan's Talisman. See if I can find this without spoiling stuff. Okay, so 25% damage against Fanatic and minus 10% stress. This is okay just because of the minus stress. Otherwise, this thing is just not worth it. There are other ways you can get Fanatic damage than having this thing. So I'm not going to spoil what it is, but it's, even for its intended purposes, it is not that good. But it is nice that it has the 10% stress. It did not used to have that. So we need the Corvid stuff. So Shrieker Trinkets. So we have crit, accuracy, speed, and dodge. The dodge one is bad. The dodge one's really bad. The rest of these are okay. Like, they are usable if you play low torch. They're a little scary to play in low torch. So, which one? We said this one's bad. So that's cell tier. But the rest of them, we can put right here. So, flat 7 crit, pretty nice. Bleed resist, very nice. 10 accuracy, pretty helpful, especially in like low torch, because I think things get a dodge boost. I think. And then you get scouting chance, which really helps in darkness. So yeah, this one's pretty good. And then more speed is never bad, and then stun resist is kind of whatever, but it is helpful. It's better than not having it. Now, we're almost through this, though, so that's pretty good. The Color of Madness stuff, you can buy these. I wish they put them in order. Actually, they're in order of, like, selling. So, Lens of the Comet, do I have that up here? I'm going to do this one first, since it's right here. So, ignoring stealth, and then minus virtue, and then plus crit, is pretty crappy. I mean, it could be B, because if you can get it to go off, then sure, it's alright. 5% crit with some kind of condition, and ignoring stealth is... You know what? No, it's bad. It's bad. So the reason being that stealth enemies just aren't threatening enough in the game. Like, they can be threatening, but they're not threatening enough to warrant having this, and then having minus virtue chance, like, you're basically never going virtuous. It's a 1 in 20. It's only a 5% chance at that point. And then you have a conditional 5% crit. There's so many other things I could be doing than having conditional crits and hitting stealth enemies, which aren't even guaranteed to spawn. The coat we are sad about, because the coat is some pretty lost potential here. So the coat gives you a stacking stress resist buff, and then it gives you stacking accuracy, and it has downsides if someone dies in your party. And this thing is honestly, like, you could say B. So these trinkets, you have to buy them. So like a sell tier for this trinket would just be don't buy it. And it's B just because the stacking stress resist could actually be pretty good. But the problem is it has stacking accuracy, and all the effects are on monster kill, which means to even get it started, you have to be killing things. And if you're killing things, you probably have your accuracy capped, because your damage dealer wants to kill stuff. And also, damage dealers don't really need the stress resist. So if you're in Farmstead, this gets a lot better. But if you're in a regular dungeon run, you know, you can get this thing to cap out at 16 by killing 8 enemies. And like, that's, unless they like summon, you know, friends, it's just not worth it. It's such a pain to stack up. And the effects are pretty minimal. This might actually be sell tier. I don't know. I'd rather just put on Book of Sanity. and then just never have to worry about stacking that up. And then having this penalty if someone dies. The get more shards trinkets, these are both, I think this is plus 15%, plus 25% for, sorry about that, had to cut. So yeah, more shards given, and more shards given. I don't like these because you need to spend a good amount of shards on them, so they have to like pay for themselves, and they have downsides. And so once they pay for themselves, then they're good, but it does take them a minute to pay for themselves. And not all not all farmstead trinkets are worth buying. So I don't think you need the help that much. If this was like plus 40%, like plus 25, and the stress was like plus 5%, and they cost like 50, then maybe. But it's just not worth it. Like, Color of Madness stuff is not fun enough to warrant grinding all this out. We're going to do the other Color of Madness stuff here since we're on this page. The Miller's Pipe is actually pretty okay. So this might be A in some books, I'm not sure. But killing something gives you -2 stress, and then when you kill them, you get like this corpse explosion effect, where it tries to blight everything that died. So the chance is pretty low, and you can't use it in certain areas or against certain enemies because they just have really high blight resist. But other than that, it's nice, especially the fact here, this note. So if it dies to damage over time, it'll go off again. So like it can set itself off over and over. So that's actually pretty cool. So you could argue it's A, and I wouldn't fight you, but it's like incremental damage. And sometimes in like Farmstead, you want to control how you're killing stuff. Sometimes you don't want them to bleed out. They might have like 2 hit points, and you just want them to stay there. So you can like let 2 reinforcements come and then kill them and then go that way. So it's still really good. The thing, no. So this is the Miller's Locket. Oh, Mildred's Locket, excuse me. So if you're fighting the Miller, it's really good. If you're not fighting the Miller, it's pretty average. You know what? It could be. It could be an A. It's just literally 3 speed and 40 blight resist on a trinket. So that's okay. It's a good solid source of speed. So I like it there. Because if I'm putting Feather Crystal in A, or not A, S, and when it has less speed and, you know, different variants and downsides and stuff like that, this should be A. So I'm trying to be consistent. The Thing trinkets. So the Mesmerizing Eye. Where is that? It's right here. This is 4% crit. And if you're under 40%, it goes up to 8, which is really nice, but it has nothing else going on. So kind of a bad conditional to have. However, Flagellant will get the most use out of these because he always wants to be at like 40%. That's where he gets all of his stuff going. So it's kind of nice that all of the Thing from the Stars trinkets line up with him. So if you're going to use them, he's probably the best candidate. The Shifting Hide. This is another A tier. It could be S. So like if you're getting really torn up, then it goes into like Super Drive or Overdrive or whatever you want to say. And it's good. So just a lot of flat stress reduction. This thing is pretty good. There are better stun trinkets by the time you get this usually, unless you kill Thing from the Stars on week 12 and it just lands in your pockets. So that's pretty nice. But yeah, just 10% stun chance. And if you're under 40% life, it goes up higher. Not bad. And then this thing here, I'm going to put it in B. Because if you're fighting Thing from the Stars, it's really good. But the crits... Like, the crit's the best thing about it, honestly. Because I'm not going to spoil how the fight works. But the crit is probably the best thing about it. So if you are killing Thing from the Stars, it's good. Otherwise, it's just completely dead weight. So I can't put it higher than B. IMO. Okay, boss trinkets. Boss trophies. So the Necromancer Collar. This is B tier. Because Unholy is just not that common. But when you fight Unholy, it slaps. Literally. The Prophet's Eye. This is pretty okay. It's good. So if you have someone in 4th, actually not that good for Arbalest, but you could still run it on her. So if you're in the very back, you get accuracy, speed, and minus stress. Actually, that's pretty good. I think A's fine. You could argue S. But like Plague Doctor getting an extra 3 speed if she's in rank 4 to get those quick stuns, amazing. Minus stress, super good. I actually kind of forgot that I even had this thing. You know, like as a trinket, I just stopped. I think I stopped using it, but I used to use it all the time. So I think it's really good. So if you can put someone in rank 4 and they don't get pulled, then it really gets a lot of mileage. Hag's Ladle. I think we all kind of sleep on this. So you just get a bunch of Blight skill chance and then Blight and Disease Resist. This is actually really good on Shieldbreaker, who has very bad base Blight Resist. And so if you have this ability to do Blight damage and you want to have some defensive stuff, it's good. So if you can find those uses, it's pretty strong. Even if you don't have Blight chance or like Blight skills, then it's still good for the resist alone because there's no downsides. The Fuse Stick is S. So you get 2 speed, 10% damage, and then 6% range crit. So if you're a ranged character, this just helps out immensely. It also doesn't have the conditional stuff, like you have to be in rank 4 or something like that. And it doesn't have a downside. So the only potential downside is the speed if you want to put it on Arbalest, but anyone else can usually really appreciate this thing. So I think it's an easy S pick. Wilbur's Flag is S just because the dodge bonus isn't that high. But the stun resist is pretty nice, so it's a really good defensive trinket. Fleshheart, this is S. If I had an SS or like an S plus or something like that, then this would be in that. Like Flesh's Heart is so good. Let's actually look at it. So you have 15% HP and then 50 bleed resist for like no conditions. And bleed is the most common damage over time type. Putting this on Flagellant pretty much makes him immune to Reclaim against himself, so he can just spam it and not have to worry about bleeding. And then there's so many characters that if you want them to be tanky, you put this on, and it gives you a lot of valuable defense. So you get the flat HP, but then also, since bleed is so common, you just don't get bled from that point on. So there's a lot of good defensive application of this thing. I love having it, and I hate when I don't have it. I feel so weak when I have a file that doesn't have the Fleshheart. Siren's Conch Shell, this is another S tier. I don't use it that much, but debuff is very common. And then minus 20% stress is helpful on just anyone. So this can find a home on any character. The Crew Bell, this is actually just like cell tier, literally. So the move resist is worthless. I shouldn't say worthless. It's not that good. And then the healing received is not as good as having healing output. So Junia's head is just better. And even though this is in cell tier, don't sell it because it's a boss trophy. But it's just not, it's not good. It's really not that good. Are we really at the end here already? Okay. Wolf's Tassel. This is a easy S tier. So if you have mark parties, you're using this. There are a lot of enemies that are 2-space. There are a lot of bosses that are 2-space enemies or size 2. Or bigger. So having this, as we see here, the crit buff applies to any enemy that is size 2 and above. So there are bigger enemies out there. This really opens up characters like Bounty Hunter for mark damage. Arbalest doesn't really care about the accuracy, but this could be like an all-in-one trinket on, on Bounty Hunter. Like you could run this and then run like Flesh's Heart. Just have this like really high damage and defensive Bounty Hunter. But also, the damage versus marked thing here means that it doesn't even have to be a marked character. Like, this doesn't have to be on Arbalest. This could be on Leper. And Leper will get bonus damage and accuracy against a marked target. So that is a really cool application of it. So if you like to use marks, and that's like one of your favorite playstyles, this is going on someone. And as much as I do kind of dump on mark as a playstyle, and that's not the people that like Mark. Mark's issue is something I need to just talk about at length some other time. But even with how bad Mark can be, this makes Mark really good. So I think Wolf's Tassel is an easy lock for S. Okay, so I apologize about the weird transition here, but I'm going to end the video right after this. This is me going through, after doing some editing and listening to some comments and feedback and all that stuff, and I've decided instead of trying to make like a part 4 or 3 later, I'm just going to do some revisions now. The first is the Caution Cloak. I'm going to put this up into A. It is a lot of scouting. The downside is pretty minimal, so that's just all I'm going to say about it. The Dark Bracer, a lot of people said I was sleeping on this, so I'm just going to assume that probably I was. So the extra crit does help in darkness because wrapping up fights is actually really important. So 8% crit on a green is pretty good. I guess it's worth considering if you are running Torchless. The Recovery Charm, I also forgot that sometimes you just don't run teams with dedicated healers, so having like self-heals or food healing and stuff like that, that makes this a lot better. And it's no downside for 40% extra healing received, which is really nice. And if you have like a Flagellant main healer, this helps too. So I think I was sleeping on this one a bit. The next one is the Crucifix. And I was thinking more about this too. I was like, what if I put this on Leper? Then I get bleed resist, which is like the most important thing for him besides accuracy. And then you get extra damage against a common subtype. And then you get like the minus % HP, which he already has a ton, so who cares? So I think if you can work around the HP, the damage, and then like the bleed resist, if there's like a cleave or something, is really nice. And losing 20% HP and not getting bled by stuff like, what is it? Like Arterial Pinch, for instance, that does more than 20% of your life in a bleed for most characters. So having a way to not get bled by that is worth losing hit points for. These are actually all going into A, so spoilers. The next one is the I. So this is accuracy, unconditional, and scouting for Torchless, which is very important. So I think I was kind of missing the point on that. The Talons give you extra crit, unconditional, and then bleed chance and low torch, which it kind of clashes because if you crit, then you still have higher bleed chance, but it is a lot of damage, potentially, so it is nice. And then the last one is the Crimson Signet Ring. This is, again, A, just because 25% reduced stress is really nice, and if you find this early enough when you have to deal with all the Crimson Court garbage and you still haven't like cleared all the content so your people are getting stressed out constantly, or I should say diseased or infected, then this is just better than Book of Sanity, so this does have a lot of use. And now that I have rectified these mistakes, I'm sure people will tell me the other mistakes I made, and you know what, we're just going to have to live with those because I don't think I'm going to do a part 4. So that is going to be it for this one. Next time we're going to do these here. This is going to take a minute, my goodness. This might be an hour right here. I don't know. I gotta talk quickly, or like I have to go through things a little faster. I'm trying to, but I always get caught up talking about stuff. So I hope you enjoyed it. Join Discord if you have not already. That'd be pretty cool. And obviously if you want to like submit viewer runs, then find a way to get them to me, because we're still doing that. And the other guide project I'm working on is Arblest, and I need to really actually try and start putting that together, because I have like 2 pages of notes and I just haven't like started recording or anything like that yet. So I'm gonna get to work on that because my voice is starting to go, so recording gameplay is gonna be a lot easier. Anyway, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. I don't know, high five your grandmother or something, just do something positive out there, and I'll see you later.